This is going to be on smart cities. And for this session, I'm going to invite our moderator, Mr. Abhijit Bhagwat, Chairman, Education and Skill Development, NER India. Our panelists, Professor Dr. Sebastian Morris, GIM and and Mr. Subhash Patil, Partner, PwC India. Quickly, Professor Dr. Sebastian Morris is a senior professor and chair of the Center for Public Policy and Governance at the Goa Institute of Management, joining us. And Subhash is the partner in the One Consultancy practice of PwC India. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, and a very good morning to all of us in this hall. Am I audible to the last person in the hall? Oh, great. Thank you so much. So, Professor Morris is currently the chair of Center for Public Policy and Governance at Goa Institute of Management. After having taught at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad for more than 25 years. And Subhash Patil is a technocrat with expertise on use of technology for smart cities. He is a senior partner at PwC India. Mahatma Gandhi, sometime in early last century, must be in 20s or 30s, said that India lives in its villages. So why was that? Because 90% of population of India used to live in villages. 10% people used to live in cities. So 30-40 करोड़ का population होगा शायद तब इंडिया का. So Indian cities में 3-4 करोड़ लोग रहते थे करीबन 70, 80, 90 साल पहले. Currently, 36% of our population lives in cities. अगर 140 करोड़ का आबादी है, so roughly around 50 करोड़ people live in Indian cities today. 4 करोड़ 50 करोड़. It is expected कि अगले 10 साल में around 50% of population will be living in Indian cities. So अगर आबादी इतनी ही रहती है, अगले 10 साल में बढ़ती नहीं है, तो भी 70 करोड़ will be living in Indian cities. Around 20 crore people will be moving from villages to Indian cities. 20 crores. एक फैमिली में अगर 4 लोग है, 5 लोग है, तो 4 करोड़ 5 करोड़ नए घर चाहिए होंगे इंडियन सिटीज में रहने के लिए, इन लोगों के लिए. No, most of people in this hall are realtors, are successful realtors from different cities of India. Right? They are doing good business, great business. So one of the most important driving factor for all of us doing good or great business in our respective cities is urbanization. I don't think that anybody would disagree with this. Urbanization is the biggest driving factor of we doing great business as a realtor. More and more people moving to cities, needing more and more houses to live, and we are there to provide them that. So urbanization more and more has been happening and is going to happen. By 2050, it is expected, it is being said that 70% of world's population will be living in cities. Just imagine, look at those numbers, do your maths. कितने सारे लोग शहरों में रहेंगे, मूव होंगे, तो कैसे होगा? जितने शहर है आज इंडिया में, ये और ज़्यादा और ज़्यादा और ज़्यादा डेंसली पॉपुलेटेड होते जाएंगे. इमेजिन करो, लास्ट 10 साल में 20 साल में लोग बोलते हैं बॉम्बे में अभी रहने का मज़ा नहीं है, इतनी आबादी हो गई है, इतना ट्रैफिक, इतना कंजेशन, अभी और लोग आएंगे, क्या होगी इन सिटीज़ की हालत, बैंगलोर की, हैदराबाद की, बॉम्बे की. और ये होना ही है, अगले 10 साल में, अगले 20 साल में ये होना ही है. सो व्हाट इज द वे अहेड? जो करंट सिटीज है वो और बड़े होते जाएंगे, उनके नंबर्स, पॉपुलेशन नंबर्स और बड़े होते जाएंगे, या तो फिर और सिटीज बनेंगे. अगर सिटीज नए बनने ही हैं तो व्हाई नॉट स्मार्ट सिटीज? अगर जो करंटली एग्जिस्टिंग सिटीज है उनको और ज्यादा लिवेबल बनाना है तो व्हाई नॉट कन्वर्टिंग देम इनटू स्मार्ट सिटीज, फ्रॉम सिटीज टू स्मार्ट सिटीज. कितने लोगों के पास फोन है? कैन यू रेज योर हैंड? सो मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल हैव रेज देयर हैंड्स कि मेरे पास फोन है. कितने लोगों के पास स्मार्टफोन है? द सेम हैंड्स हैव बीन रेज्ड अगेन. तो फोन किसके पास है? सबके पास तो स्मार्टफोन है. और ये सब हुआ है लास्ट 5, 7, 8 साल में. फोन से स्मार्टफोन्स पे हम लोग मूव हो गए. सिटीज बहुत बड़ी बात है, फोन बहुत छोटी बात है. तो प्रोबेबली 5-7 साल में नहीं होगा, बट 10 साल में होगा, 15 साल में होगा. स्मार्ट सिटीज आर द वे अहेड. दैट वाज द व्हाई फॉर smart cities, the way ahead. My first question is going to be to Subhash. What is a smart city? How will you define that?
Thanks, Abhijit. Thanks for setting the context well. Few data points just on some of these aspects. So when we got independence, 1947, we were 16% urbanized. As we heard, we are now about 36-37% urbanized. So about 20-21% urbanization happened in last 75 years. And we see our cities are a mess, whether it is solid waste management, traffic, healthcare. We are not probably having the kind of livability we would like to have in the cities. And that's why that mission had come up. But next 10 years, we are going to be around 50%. So our pace of urbanization is going to go much rapidly. And there are the challenges. In fact, there are challenges as well as opportunities for the people in the room. Challenges because we need to, I think we cannot afford to miss the bus what we have done in the past. We need to be more proactive, and the way we are building our infrastructure, social, economic or establishment, different kinds of infrastructure which is required in cities. Opportunities because I think as Abhijit said, there is a demand. There is going to be a requirement for people to have houses. How we help these people to get into better houses, better neighborhoods, and that's where I think this community would have lot of influence. And because when we talk about smart cities, the real estate sector has a very important role to play. Now, coming to your question, I think smart city definition-wise, I think people would have different definitions. But then, if you ask me, there are 4 or 5 basic areas which we would like to see better than what they are today. Obviously, better healthcare, better solid waste management, transport. Sir is expert into that, and probably we'll hear something about that. Economic opportunities is something which is important because people migrate to cities for more economic opportunities. Unfortunately, because we have not created infrastructures, we have created slums, because economic opportunities are being created in cities, but then we have not been able to give housing probably to people, and thus we see a lot of metros with the slums. So that's where I think we are. Another area of smart city is how cities have become resilient. as we are getting into climate change, the challenges of the climate also affect a lot of us. So I'm sure we will all not like to stay in a place which gets flooded twice in a year, or some other kind of concerns which could be around climate change. So resilience is another area. So that's where I would call sort of a broad definition for a smart city. Yeah, Abhijit.
So, what I feel, a smart city is an urban region with highly advanced physical infrastructure, communication, better road networks, sustainable real estate is how I would call it. Now, who are the stakeholders, sir? Who are going to make this happen? Converting existing cities to smart cities, as well as creating new cities which are smart. Who are the stakeholders according to you? Government? For example, what role
I think
government is?
the key stakeholders, obviously the administration who runs the government, could be the municipality there, urban local body. There are certain other organizations which are also involved in the administration, which is police, which is electricity department, so on and so forth. So one is government, obviously. I think the people play a very important role because I think the way we make our choices, it gets reflected on the way the city gets created. And many times, I'm talking about real estate more because of that's the context here. I think, and the real estate sector can play a very important role because the last mile connectivity aspects, while creating the infrastructure, when I'm saying infrastructure, it's more about the housing infrastructure for residential as well as the commercial. So how the utilities are built, how open spaces are given, green areas are kept, cycle tracks are created. So I think neighborhood is something which, because all of us like to go to Dubai and probably we feel ki wow, what a city. It has probably a higher FSI there in terms of how the city has come up. But then we still see a lot of open spaces, a lot of green spaces there, better than probably most of our cities. That's because the way the construction, the way the facades are kept for us to probably feel better in the neighborhood which we say. So that's why I feel ki, okay, you all have definitely a great role to play in the future, because what we saw as a smart city in the past, there were certain areas which government had priorities on and they tried developing them. But then there is a thought process of smart cities 2.2. I'm sure and government has a plan to go to smaller cities and towns. And that's an opportunity for all of you to probably look at how you can influence the government to take the right projects. Yeah, Abhijit.
So probably I'll repeat this question to you, sir. What role is government playing in creating a public policy for creation of smart cities?
Can you hear me? Yeah, well, before I go that, just a few points. First of all, urbanization is not under 40%. It's probably in the range of 41 to 42%. We miss, though, mapping it because a lot of the, I won't say recent, but since the National Highway Development Program, a lot of the urbanization has been pulled along the highways. In fact, studies show that of the asset formation in rural India, a significant part has gone on to the national highways because they were the highways which came in the middle of, after a long period of terrible highways that we had. Yeah, now coming to your point about the role of government in smart cities, we know that there is a smart cities program. Government has spent some 2-3 lakh crores of investments, and a lot of things have happened. But on the whole, it has given a lot of opportunity, certainly for construction companies, real estate firms, consultants, and so on. But my question really is, have we really got the social and public value out of it? And I'll come to that in a moment. But before that, let me just state this, that let's understand what the problems of urban India are. The real estate development has really taken India forward. Today, I can move into a grand and good house if I have the money. Even if I had, and it's much easier than before. If I look back, let's say 30 years ago, the same class of people can now afford much better houses. And that has happened because of the real estate revolution in India, let loose by a lot of liberalization and so on. But the point is, while I get great private value inside my home can be very luxurious, there are all kinds of fittings, nice things out there. The moment I step out of my home, my house or my housing colony, I don't know where I am. You know, I'm subject to a whole lot of stress. Okay. See, first let us outline, you know, the various problems of urban India and then worry about smart cities. The first and most important problem really is the, the morbidity. So if you really look at urban India, the morbidity is very high, a lot of infectious diseases happen because, there's no 100% coverage of the sewerage system. If a sewerage system can cover 80%, pushing it to 100% is not a great expense. But not pushing it to 100% makes us suffer a great deal. Because even though I have a great toilet at home, when I step out, I'm in the middle of a world where others don't have and they probably do it on the road, etc. So there is a huge problem out there. The second problem is, let's recognize that, India, among most countries, and probably in all cities in the country, except maybe a few, the travel speeds have been falling. A simple Google, maps-based comparison would show that from two random points in India, whether using public or private transport, the speeds have come down. And they have come down to ludicrous levels of under 20 kilometers an hour. And in some places like Bangalore, it's often as low as 8 or 9 kilometers an hour. So the point I'm trying to say is public value is extremely important. Okay? While you may not have, as real estate magnates sitting here, you may not have much control over it. I think it's high time you lobbied with the government and worried about what is it that can create public value. Now remember, government officers and so on are not driven by public value except when they are pressured. Okay? Now let's come to smart cities. So the smart cities program was a great program. It hoped to make Indian cities smart. But it was more of I would say, a kind of program which tried to do good, but on a base which was problematic. And I do think the base has to be addressed. So the first and foremost, aspect, if we really want to have, smart cities to release value in India, create public value, would be first and foremost changing the way the planning is done. What we have is what is a regulatory, control-based, colonial system which we call the master planning. Okay? Overly ambitious in terms of FSI, in terms of road layouts, and completely devoid of any understanding of real town planning. Okay? It's more of a control over real estate than a plan. So what is the net result? Something like maybe 10 to 15% of the master plans are ever realized. Okay? And it's not me saying it. Very famous architects and town planners from all over the world have said that. Now the Indian master planning results in the lowest amount of built-up space for an average Indian householder. Okay? Highest population densities. Very tiny cities in terms of area. Some of course are big like Delhi because they've gone beyond. Okay? And a great deal of congestion. Okay? So one problem is with the master planning. Now what is the problem with the master planning? Essentially that it does not have a sense of hierarchy of where to start. It's area after area after area which are picked up. But if you ask me and if you ask any elementary fellow from a planning school, he'll tell you that the first thing to do is to lay out the arterial networks. So the transport networks should drive. Okay? So we have a problem with town planning. What is the other problem? The other problem is more organizational. Okay, we have our municipalities. The 74th Amendment was made, and the idea was that autonomy would go to the mayors and to the elected. Okay, but even now, after so many years, that autonomy has not come. In fact, it's not just a question of autonomy. Nobody is really empowered. So the mayor can't do, because he does not have his own staff. He does not have any control over the municipality. Neither can the commissioner or the civil servant who heads it, because he does not have the power either. Okay? So nobody has the power, so there's a lack of autonomy, and it's a kind of process which is adrift. Okay? And while the private sector is able to do wonderfully well, in terms of building real estate, the point is in this public sphere of getting the roads right, getting the municipality, the sewerage right and so on, they don't seem to have much of a say. But I would think that it's time that we got going. So these are the most important problems. And I have not, of course, discussed the transport problems. But I do think when we talk of smart cities, had the autonomy been there and had master planning been changed, it would have really worked. Because it brings in new technology, it brings in fresher ideas, it brings in the idea of interlinkages. And that's another problem, you know, in the urban space, if you want value creating real estate, not just within the private built up space, but in the public space, you need coordination across umpteen government agencies. Okay? And that is simply not there. Okay? And that coordination, if it can come, a lot of value can come. In fact, I can see many of the people who have built wonderful real estate in faraway places, if they, for instance, get their linkages, okay, their values can go up. Okay? Yeah. So I'll just stop here, you know, for the moment. Yeah.
So what would be the further changes needed to be done in those urban initiatives to make the smart cities more value creative?
Yeah, see, I would think something like this. See, the first round of smart cities were caught between, do I do it citywide or do I take a certain area and do it? Okay. So many of the smart city projects were done in a small area within the city, more like a demonstration. Okay. Some were done citywide, but you know, and probably they have had better effect. So when you demonstrate something within a city, within a small area of the city, you can kind of isolate it and create a showpiece. It's more like a VIP comes and you clean up the road and things are fine, but the moment he goes away, everything is bad. So you can get something done there, but when the authority moves out, it can actually collapse. So what I would think, we need to do is we need to come back and address these two problems I've said, and then I'll lay out certain assumptions which the public planner and the designer has in India, which are completely orthogonal to actually creating value. Okay. For instance, we don't have a sense of hierarchy in the road networks and the transport networks in the city. We need a sense of hierarchy. The metros which we have laid out at great cost should drive the movement. But if the metros have to drive, surely the land use around the metros should improve. The FSIs must go up. Okay? The land use in terms of, let's say, moving away from industrial and residential to commercial must happen. In fact, metros, stations around the center should be first and foremost commercial, and we have seen this all over the world. So land use must get integrated with the transport network. So the metros must drive, the other road networks must play a secondary role to them, and that's one thing. The other is, if you look, the road networks in India are simply not are not grids. They are essentially historical footprints. The opportunity to go grids, which we had in planning, were done in a wrong way. So if you look, Bangalore is not a case of an unplanned city. It is essentially a case of a very, very badly planned city. The plans were wrong. The plans were wrong because when we laid out the road networks, we didn't lay them out as grids, but we laid them out as point-to-point and T-junctions. Now imagine T-junctions like Banerghatta Road. Okay? About 80% of the traffic on Banerghatta Road is unwanted because they are just attempting to cross, but because there are T's, you have to end up using Banerghatta Road. So this is one problem. Now I'll say another problem, which is so very obvious. You build a bypass or a ring road to take the traffic out of the city, which is just passing by. A good idea. But then what happens? The bypass becomes the city, the new city. Why does it happen? Because in the old city, you don't give the correct FSI, you don't change the land use, and therefore people are frustrated. Here at least there is a road, and they'll come and settle on the bypass. Okay? So, T-junctions, bypass, lack of hierarchy, and certainly lack of multimodality. Today, if you look, there is simply nothing like multimodality. I can't use a bus, go into a train, and let us say, pick para-transport and come out. If I have luggage, I necessarily have to use a motorized taxi because there is no way I can walk in and out of the metros. Okay? Metros are all going to be white elephants, not because India doesn't need the metros, for God's sake, but because they are so unconnected, okay, that their value destruction has already happened. Okay, so there is no, so what is building a metro? Okay, ठीक है, metro बनाना है, बना दिया. लेकिन, you know, whether the people find use out of it, what is the value they are getting out of it, I don't know whether we are getting anything. My bet, and believe me, except the Delhi metro, all others are going to be not just financially unviable, which they all are, which is okay, but they're all going to be socially unviable. That means the social value that they create is actually much less than the social costs which are borne. Okay? So this is a very serious problem, and I think I should be addressing government, but you know, you are influential people. If you want really the next generation of good value creating real estate, you know, you need to step out. Your association needs to engage with government, needs to engage with planning authorities and so on. And I think is why I'm here, you know, hopefully. Yeah.
So, speaking about the road and transport network, what you just spoke, it makes me remember one thing that I had read quite long back. So, which is a developed country? So, developed country is not that country in which everybody has got a car. Developed country is a country in which everybody uses a public transportation. Right? And what you just spoke about, will you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, see, when we say we must promote public transportation, okay, Indian town planning authorities are totally aware of it. In fact, they're so totally aware of it that everything that they do will negate the use of public transport. This is the problem. So India has the highest car use, you know, adjusted for income. For a relatively poor economy, a lower middle income economy, we have more cars per person in most cities than most other countries. Now, this may come as a surprise. A lot of women in Bangalore buy cars to just go half a kilometer, okay, because of the safety angle. Okay? So public transport is almost entirely useless for anybody above a certain class. Okay? And for the rest, it's like in a cattle class. Okay? So the point is, how do you improve public transport? You have to take the perspective of the consumer. And if you take the perspective of the consumer and actually walk from one point, pick up public transport, go to another side, you will see what kind of problems are there. You know, my students did a study on access of the disabled to public transport. And the conclusion that they came with is quite interesting. They said, forget about access of the disabled to public transport. The access of the abled, other than the very, you know, kind of young boys, to public transport is actually difficult. Okay? Somebody like me, I'm not disabled, I would find it very difficult actually to access. Steps are unmatched, you have to climb up, the buses will come, not stop at the stop point, things like that. And so therefore, you know, the point is multimodality should be an absolute priority for the government of India and should be incorporated. Now, yes, they are incorporated in smart cities, but they get tokenized or ritualized because they are not being done without, they are being done or they are being attempted to be done without those major changes, which is autonomy to municipalities, and the whole master planning needs to be replaced with proper town planning. Now, he mentioned, you know, FSI. I think that's extraordinarily important. Shanghai plans with an FSI of 8 in places. Okay? Mumbai has an FSI which is so low, only recently it has gone up. And in the 70s and 80s, we actually reduced the FSI. Okay? Which is unimaginable. That's the only city in the world which has done that. Okay? So ideally, Indian town planners must release a lot more land, encompass much more, give autonomy. And you are beginning to see differences. If you look at the Gujarat cities, particularly Ahmedabad, they're doing better because they have much better autonomy. That's number one. When, I forget his name, when the great civil servant was there, he fought for it and he ensured that there is some kind of autonomy. Okay? So I think that becomes very important. So Gujarat cities are doing well, Kerala cities are in the doldrums, you know, and so the differences you can see in terms of the marginally better autonomy that Gujarat has, and they also have a better land acquisition program, you know, policy in the form of using TP schemes. Okay? So Ahmedabad and Baroda and so on use TP schemes. That is, they aggregate and pool the land. Now that's very important. So if you can use pooling schemes, okay, and many of you all who are from Gujarat would know that the TP schemes have given great value to the city. Okay, Ahmedabad, although it's a city of around 8 or 9 million, okay, still has one of the lower, real estate costs, and real estate is of good quality. Life is better. Okay? Yeah.
So, since I come from Gujarat, to further elaborate on this, there is a development plan. Gujarat's development plan model is a much proven one as compared to other states. So, in that development plan or TP schemes, town planning schemes, what the government urban development department does is that they pool land. Suppose some area is to be developed as an urban area, सब फार्मर्स के पास जितना ज़मीन है तो सरकार ज़मीन लेता है 60% वापस देता है, इट इज़ कॉल्ड फाइनल प्लॉट, एंड 40% लैंड इज बीइंग टेकन ओवर बाय गवर्नमेंट, out of which the road network, the public utilities, parks, gardens, everything is being created, and they sell some land and they use that money for the urban development of that part of the city. So it's a very proven business model, Gujarat's business model.
It's certainly much better, yeah.
Now, just one food of thought, one thing that came to my mind just now. Yesterday we were hearing to Ashwinder and he was wondering कि साला गुड़गांव में इतना सब रेट क्यों है, इतना ये जिस रेट पे फ्लैट्स बिकते हैं ये क्यों है, दिस इज अनसस्टेनेबल, इट इज इलॉजिकल, दैट इज व्हाट ही सेड. एंड द सेम थिंग केम टू माई माइंड राइट नाउ कि बॉम्बे में फॉर एग्जांपल 70,000 रुपया 80,000 रुपया स्क्वायर फीट पे फ्लैट बिकता है, ये रेट क्यों है. लोग बोलते हैं जैसे दुबई में जो का प्रॉपर्टीज का जो लोग मार्केटिंग करते हैं बोलते हैं बॉम्बे से सस्ता है दुबई में प्रॉपर्टी, या ऐसा सुनते हैं हम लोग न्यूयॉर्क में प्रॉपर्टी बम्बई से सस्ता है. सो क्यों है, इज बॉम्बे मोर लिवेबल, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्या, इट इज गोइंग आउट, बस्टिंग, why this rate, it is unsustainable.
See, the answer is very clear cut. If you use standard pricing theory of real estate, location theory, you can explain it by two factors. If you reduce the extent of the city, and if what they call the theta factor of the city is low, as is the case of Bombay, and you do the kind of absurd planning of very low FSIs, then the land cost just rises, and the real estate cost rises much more than the land cost. So let me just make this point that in most good cities of the world, I'm talking about the advanced countries, many of the Asian countries and so on, okay, what happens is at the periphery, that means where the locational value is practically zero and there is only the agricultural land value, okay, the cost of real estate for a new real estate which is constructed on virgin land at the periphery of the city is equal to the construction cost plus about maybe 100% more. Whereas for the same kind of real estate in India, the cost of construction, the floor space cost is the cost of construction plus 300% more. Okay, now this 300% more is happening not because you guys are ripping the customer off. You have real costs of very high, low FSIs. You have very high costs meeting regulatory requirements. You have very high costs of absurd standards being laid. Okay? So let me just give you an illustration of where you need to talk. Today, under the pollution control norms, if you build a large housing colony, you have to treat your own sewerage. So the best housing colonies in Pune, where I stay, have a stink because they're all treating the sewerage right there at the level of maybe 1,000 flats. Okay? Now, sewerage treatment should not be done at that level. It's something that has to be done at a much larger level, minimally at the city level or at a ward level or at a sub-city level. Okay? Now, why is this kind of a law why has such a law been imposed on people? The answer is very clear-cut, because of government incapacity. But how long can the government say that, look, I can't treat my own sewerage, I don't know how to do it, you manage it within. No, that's not the way. They must learn. There are certain things which governments must do and they must get the capacity. Okay? Otherwise, we'll have wonderful housing, okay? But I'm always, confronted with the smell of the sewer because it's being done right next to me at the point where I take my car out of the gate. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being so patient, friends. we are going to have two of those experts amongst us. So across in the hall, you can always talk to them about what can make our cities more livable and better and smart. Meanwhile, I would sum it up that things are going in a better way. Most of you would have heard, I'll just use one or two examples. Gift City. So it's the first smart, integrated, smart city getting developed in Gujarat. So that's an example to see. And more such things are going to be witnessed in this country. The way ahead is going to be smart cities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank
Thank you. Due to paucity of time, we won't be taking questions, but if you have any questions, you could feel free to connect with them during the lunch break. And now I would request Mr. Chetan Chopra, Joint Secretary, NAR India, to please step forward. Also request the ones who are behind. We will be having the lucky draw right now, so please usher in